Well, good, happy Tuesday morning to everyone. My name is Kristen Flynn. I am excited to have you here for this Michigan virtual webinar in high quality online mentor programs. My name is Kristen Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of Student Learning Services, and my team oversees the course development and teacher hiring for our over 250 courses that we offer to middle and high school students around the state. We have nearly 30,000 enrollments annually. And just a quick background, prior to coming to Michigan Virtual 5 years ago, I taught high school English and spent the majority of my 22-year career in public education as an administrator at the elementary, middle, high school, and central office levels. I'm really excited about the guests that we have with us today. And before I introduce them, just a quick note about Michigan Virtual. We're excited to have just recently celebrated our 20th year anniversary in 2018 with over 250,000 enrollments since we started. As a nonprofit organization, we not only believe in advancing K-12 digital learning through teaching, research, practice, and partnerships, but we truly believe that every person can use digital learning to reach his or her full potential. Our purpose today is really to share some effective mentoring practices, school policies, and other things that contribute to high success rates for online learners. Excited to have some practitioners with us in the field, a principal and mentor who are on the call today, along with our outreach coordinator. We are going to hopefully leave you with not just examples of how principals and mentors can support online learners, but talk about the research and best practices on mentoring, and then leave you with some free resources to help you and your individual districts drive high student outcomes in online learning. So with that, I'd like to touch base just about a few housekeeping items. We would like to make this webinar interactive. By default though, however, you are on mute with your microphones, but if you have any questions throughout, we just ask that you type them into the chat box window. And I have Nicole here in the background who will be messaging me any of the questions, and we'll make sure to incorporate those into the webinar. We also have a formal Q&A time at the end. So if you have a more, let's say, complex question that you would like to ask, we just ask that you raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone. The exciting part is that the meeting is being recorded, so if you have a colleague that may have missed out today, we will have this recording available online and give you access to that at the end. So with that, I would like to first turn it over to Deb Lynch. She is our outreach coordinator for mentors. She is truly passionate about teaching and mentoring, and I will have her introduce herself. Deb?
Thanks, Kristen. I'm Debbie Lynch, the Outreach Coordinator for Mentors here at Michigan Virtual. I joined Michigan Virtual in January of 2010 as a part-time instructor. I taught business and technology at the high school level for 33 years. I was the online learning coordinator and mentor at the high school for 8 years and served over 100 students per semester. So it's nice to be able to have the teaching and mentoring perspective when I travel around the state and talk with mentors. And I'm really excited to be a part of this webinar today.
Thanks, Debbie. We are really excited to have with us today Jolynn Clark and Ryan Ford. Jolynn has previously been recognized as Michigan Association of Secondary School Principal of the Year. And Ryan is an amazing online learning mentor, both from Frankenmuth, and we'd like them to take a minute to introduce themselves. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Good morning. This is Jolynn. I'm beginning my 12th year as principal here at Frankenmuth High School, and I taught here for 6 years prior to becoming the principal. I taught AP in English 12 and AP Psychology. And I've presented and served on a number of panels during a variety of conferences around the state. I guess we're really proud. Frankenmuth High School has been regularly recognized as a top-rated school in both the state as well as nationally, earning a variety of accolades from the Washington Post, U.S. Newsweek, and America's Best High School, U.S. News and World Report's Best High Schools, and Best STEM Schools. So we're trying to find a lot of ways to support kids and provide a lot of opportunities.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Ryan Ford. This is my 11th year as a teacher. I'm in the sort of business department area, so I teach accounting, marketing, business, those sorts of classes. This is my 4th year at Frankenmuth High School. Previously, I was at a high needs district on the north side of Flint called Beecher. And at Frankenmuth, I teach business, like I said, accounting and marketing every other year or so. I also coordinate all the online learning. So I serve as a mentor and a coordinator for that. And then I also oversee our work-based learning program. And we're doing kind of a lot of stuff with that to try to grow it to hope give our kids some good opportunities.
Awesome. We're so excited that you're both here. And thank you, Debbie, for all of you right this time right before school starts. We know it's busy, so we appreciate your time to share what you're doing where students are being successful. So with that, let's start off with our first question. Tell us about your role at your school. And I think this is probably more to Ryan, and how you connect to online learning.
So like I was saying earlier, I serve as a mentor and as a coordinator. So when the kids during scheduling time decide that they'd like to take an online course, or they find out that we might not have a course that they're interested in, they'll sort of work with the counselor. And the counselor will then let me know the kids that are gonna take the courses and all that. And I take care of all that enrollment on Michigan Virtual, so I do the affiliation side of it. So then after that's all done, when the school year starts, I'll serve as a mentor where I communicate a lot with the parents. I communicate a lot with the students, take care of count day stuff, that sort of thing. Give the kids encouragement, helping them with technical difficulties, bother Michigan Virtual's technical support a lot. And, those are the sorts of things that I sort of do. The kids, when they take the classes, they can choose to take it off campus, but most stay on campus, and they either do it in the library, or I have an outer room that they'll bring their own devices and, can do their courses there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Probably this goes to Jolynn, I'm guessing, but how and when did your online program start? And really, what drove the growth of the online learning program in your school district?
Well, it's definitely been in existence since I've been in the district, as far as some students taking online. I guess back 18 years ago when I started here, there was more probably a distance learning situation than it was online learning. But we have always, through our ISD, had an opportunity to have students take online classes. So that was probably really early on. I would say that probably around 2010 is when we started to see more interest in online learning. And then in Michigan, obviously, the establishment of 21F legislation made it possible for students to do this more readily. And so I think, somewhere in 12, 13, our numbers started really growing and have continued to.
And Jolynn, do you want to talk a little bit about 21F for those on the call that may not know about what that is?
Sure. It's legislation that allows students in grades, I believe 6-12 now, to take an online course as part of their public school, high school coursework.
Excellent. Thanks.
Doesn't have all the nuts and bolts. I know there's just so much detail that goes into that. So that's the real basic version.
All right. This will probably go to Deb or Ryan, but what are the characteristics of a good mentor? If I'm someone on the call who's hiring a mentor for an online learning program or looking at getting one started, what are the characteristics I should be looking for in a mentor?
Well, I'm sure Ryan can attest to this too, but the mentor needs to be very encouraging. I think it's important to build relationships with the students. Definitely be flexible and patient, organized, be able to handle multiple tasks simultaneously because you have so many different kids taking so many different courses, and just to be the cheerleader for the kids, to inspire them and to encourage them to be able to do well and succeed, because it's different than a face-to-face class. And so they need that person. That mentor is super important in the student's role. They have the content teacher, but the mentor is so important to be able to be there to encourage the student and to be there for them.
Excellent. Ryan, do you have anything else to add to Deb's list?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. There's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it than I probably thought coming into it. Definitely the fact of, I see myself as sort of a liaison, if you will, or an intermediary in a lot of cases. So I do a lot of interacting with the actual instructor of the courses, but also the kids, more so the kids. And I think a good characteristic is to make sure that you're monitoring, or you have the ability to find time and maybe partition your day to really check in and see how each kid is doing every day. Because it's easy to forget and kind of go off, and then, you're halfway through the marking period and you're like, oh no, this kid he's only gotten through the orientation part of the class. He hasn't even done any assignments yet. So it's really important to kind of stay on top of it and have some technical abilities. I mean, it's stuff you can definitely learn, but I've used a lot of Excel and things like that, so I can filter things out easily.
Great.
I
Thank
have
you.
to add to that. I think exactly what they said, they're spot on. One of those key elements, though, if I was hiring somebody right now and saying, I want you to be our online learning mentor or coordinator or anything like that, there's a huge piece of this that is about communication skills, because this person has to be able to communicate, like Ryan said, with the instructor on the other end, sometimes with troubleshooting or tech or something like that to get things up and running the way they're supposed to be, has to be able to communicate with the students in a way that is going to continually motivate them, and then be able to communicate with parents. And sometimes that one's rough because it's amazing that, they really don't necessarily know how it's going, because it's not a live person in a building that they can see. They don't necessarily feel like they have to keep up on it as much. And then all of a sudden the kid's in trouble, or, not as far along as they need to be. So sometimes that parent communication, those are some difficult conversations to have. And then finally, to have those conversations with me. So I was going to say that Ryan does a great job of keeping me informed of what's going on, of where students stand. Are there students that he or I need to check in with? Are we at the him point of checking in, or is it getting serious and I have to check in with the student or the parent to see what's going on? But that communication piece is key.
Excellent. Thank you, all three of you. So if I'm thinking about professional development, and we often get asked this by administrators, Jolyn, can you think about the kinds of professional development, or maybe Ryan, the effective strategies you use for mentors? Because principals are often wondering, where do I send my mentor to get professional development? Anything that you've done that's been successful? And I'll also ask Deb to jump in, because I know she provides training and webinars around the state as well.
Yeah, and I'm really going to let Ryan talk about that, because he has sought out some training, but he's also, I know most of his mentor training has been through Michigan Virtual. So I'm going to let him speak to what he has done.
To be honest, I've attended probably one training that we did. I think it was last year. It was, when the SLP platform, the new one was released. And a lot of it's just sort of communicating back and forth online with, tech support and, teachers that like I said before, there was a teacher that in our building that did online learning before me, kind of what he did and what was successful for him. So it's just being able to communicate and seek out the information that's needed. And as things pop up, then decide if I need to go to professional development or not. But I think I'll be going to some more this year for sure to kind of help fine tune some of the things that we're doing.
Deb, do you want to talk a little bit about the mentor professional development that's available?
Sure. Every year I have a mentor collab. We call it Collaboration of the Minds in August, and we had a very successful one our second year this past, just a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact, here at our office. And I'm always trying to strive to find new ways to reach out to mentors besides just physically going to different schools or Zooming in with people. And I'm always willing to definitely do that. We do have some site institutes that our professional learning services offers. And we have one in Escanaba on the 16th of September. And we also have one in Sheboygan on the 25th of September. But my goal this year is to try to get in each area of our sales region. So the west side, the east side of the state, the northern region. I'm trying to get at least one, if not two, half-day PDs for mentors, so they can, not have to be out of their classroom too much, but be able to come and meet with other mentors. Because at my mentor collab a couple weeks ago, the thing they took away most was they love talking to other mentors and hearing what other mentors are doing and sharing their best practices, because they took away so many great ideas. So that's my goal. So Ryan, I'll be in your area. I'll let you know, but I'm trying to get in everybody's area so everybody can attend, because I know coming to Lansing isn't conducive for everybody. So that's my goal this year, is to have more PD.
Debbie, I think that's so important. And I know the ones that have attended the Collaboration of the Minds find so much help in just being able to get that resource from someone else, make their lab or situation or program more efficient. And certainly, just like teachers, they're very helpful in terms of sharing mentoring practices in their particular school district. So thanks for that. So Ryan and Deb, you've lived this too. Walk us through what it looks like, a day in the life of being an online learning mentor.
You can go first, Deb.
Okay. I just always wanted to have a welcoming and supportive learning environment, and flexible when kids would come into my classroom. Kids came to my lab for the most part. I did have a few kids that did take it off campus that had other, activities and things that kept them out of school. But I did a lot of walk around, answer questions. We don't expect mentors to know any content at all. It's nice if they have some techie experience, just to help kids with small things. But I used to always set kids that took classes, similar classes, I set them together, because then they could help each other and say, hey, did you figure out how to do this? And it was really nice to see them collaborate with each other. I did spend a lot of time, as Ryan said, talking with the online instructor, because as I've said before, the mentor, you're the eyes and ears for our instructors to the parents. You are truly our customers. And so you know the kids better than anybody else. So yes, you track the student progress and things, but as an instructor, we really need to have your input on, the kids, and you understand, if as an instructor, I write to you and say, hey, why is Johnny not working? Is Johnny struggling and things like that. So I just made sure that it was a great environment, and that, like I said earlier, I was their cheerleader, and it's a lot of work if you want to be a good mentor.
Yeah, I would agree that it is a lot of work. For me, so I still teach my regular classes, and a lot of times I'll actually have kids in my outer room doing their online work while I'm teaching, say, like accounting or something like that. And especially around like exam time, I have a lot of interruptions of my actual classes, because the kids feel like that exact moment, usually when I'm up in the front of the class, is when they need their password to be typed in for their final exam. But as far as the day-to-day thing, I check in almost every day on SLP, monitor their progress. I definitely, when I'm in between classes or I'm walking around the building, I think I've gotten to the point some years that the kids will avoid me, because they know I'm watching, and I'm just going to have a conversation with them about how the progress is going, that sort of thing, and if they need any help. And but it's kind of a pesky fly, if you will. But I think they actually like that, and it kind of keeps them going. And the relationships thing is the biggest. Just keep building them.
And I also think, Ryan, that by you being there, you hold the kids accountable for what they're doing in their course. Because if you just say to a kid, hey, this ends in January, we all know it's human instinct. You're going to procrastinate and wait, where, you're there, you're supporting them, and you're making them accountable. And that's what the kids need.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And the other thing is I do a lot of interpretation for the kids, because they'll get this, I'll send a parent, maybe, they'll be getting partway through the marking period or the semester, and the kids are, could be really far behind. I send positive letters too, but, for the kids that fall behind, I like to keep the parents in the loop. But parents will say invariably, well, it says on their thing that they have 89%. Well, they have 89% of the assignment, for a score of the assignments they've turned in so far. However, they have to have 100 assignments in, and they've only turned in 6. So, sometimes it's an interpretation thing, and helping the kids learn how to schedule their time, partition their time, that sort of thing.
And I always, you're right, Ryan, it's tough for parents to understand the online learning piece. That's nice that you communicate so much with them. One thing I did as a mentor that really helped was I would post the progress check dates, a couple years ago, they were in Blackboard, but now that we have more than one start date, we can't put dates on there anymore. But I asked to keep those in because I used to love those as a mentor. So I would post the date, and the progress check dates are, if you're a semester, it's about week 4, 7, 11, and 15, or 20, 40, 16, 80% of your semester or trimester. So I would post those dates so those parents would know on September 30th, your student should be to progress check 1, because the parents all have access to the student learning portal now. So they can look at the grade book and know, oh, my student should be here by this date. And I think that really helped parents because it gave them a more concrete, where should my student be at this point, than what you're saying of my kid's doing great and 89%, but my kid's only done 2 assignments. So that, I think that was a really great communication piece for parents and for kids.
Thank you both. It is a much more complex job than people think in terms of a mentor just sitting in a lab monitoring students on computers. So sounds like you're both modeling many of the best practices that research say proves effectiveness with students learning online. So thanks. What are some of the best practices that you found in terms of mentoring online students? You've talked about a few of them. I'm just curious of other things that you've used that have been successful time over time.
What I did was I started the school year with a syllabus. Just like every other classroom teacher, the first day of school, kids go from class to class and they get a syllabus. So when they came to my class, I gave them a syllabus. Even the kids I didn't see, and I wrote on there what I expected from them, what they could expect from me, what my rules were. We had different things, like I met with the kids each week, and this was part on my syllabus, but I met with the kids each Friday, and I started with the kids that had the lowest score and worked my way up. So if I ran out of time, it was okay. And I would just have a quick little meeting with them. I had them print their pacing guide. They had to have their pacing guide sitting out on their desk every day. So I could just do a quick walkthrough, and I have them cross off when they get assignments done on the pacing guide. I do a little quick walkthrough and be able to say, hey, why are you here or there? But then on Friday, they would bring their pacing guide up. We'd get on the student learning portal. We'd look at their grade, make a little plan for, how we're going to get better when we talk next Friday, how are you going to, make some improvements. And then, I had all that kind of thing on my syllabus. And I think it makes the kids realize that this is really a class. I'm not just sitting at a computer playing around. This is a true class. I'm doing assignments. I have to do tests and exams and things like that. So that was super important, because I just think you need to communicate your clear expectations and guidelines in the very beginning for the kids and the parents, and having your administrator, and I know you understand this, Jolynn and Ryan, having your administrator be supportive of these policies are huge. I mean, it's just huge, because our kids in my school, if I talk to them on a Friday and the next Friday they haven't improved, we had a homework lab after school, and I could assign them to homework lab for a day or two, whatever I thought was necessary for them to get caught up. So that wouldn't have been possible if I wouldn't have had the support from my principal. And I think the other thing, you're teaching kids how to be self-directed, independent learners, because they're teenagers, they don't know some of these skills yet. So I think that's really an important piece for a mentor to teach the kids, and really to be an advocate for the kids, and to teach them how to be an advocate for themselves also. But to be an advocate, I think is really important too for a mentor.
Debbie, can you highlight a little bit more about the pacing guides for those on the webinar that may not know about our pacing guides and our courses, and how you utilize them, not just on a weekly basis, but over time to keep them on track?
You bet. So in Blackboard, there's a tab called Course Info, and the students all know about this when they get in. There's a pacing guide. There's a 10-week, 12-week, and 18-week pacing guide. That's for our summers, 10-week, a trimester is 12-week, and then a semester is 18 weeks. So the students print whichever pacing guide fits their situation, and ours was a semester. So the kids would print that, and literally it'll say, week 1, this is what you need to do in your class. Week 2, this is what you need to do. It's broken down, because to a high school kid, if they look at the grade book in Blackboard and see I have 50 assignments to do, it's very overwhelming for them. So it's nice to have that broken down week by week for the kids to be able to say, oh, this is what I need to do or I'm going to be on vacation this week, so I better, get myself ahead a little bit so I don't get myself too far behind. And I've also helped kids when Ryan talked about, all of a sudden you're partway through the semester and you're like, oh shoot, this kid's really behind. So I've had kids take the pacing guide home, and I said, well, you need to figure out how many days left we have how many days do we have left in the semester. You can include weekends if you want, or you don't have to. And then take how many assignments you have and divide that. So I had a young lady do that one time that was very behind in her German class. And she went home. She barely got an assignment done a day. And she went home and came back the next day and said, Mrs. Lynch, I only have 6 assignments to do a day. And to pass it, I can do that. And I thought, okay, sure. So, and she did. And she didn't maybe do 6, the whole 6 assignment, but she did really well and felt like, I think she was feeling like she was being buried. And so I really think that really even broke it down too. Or if you have 12 weeks left, you can just say, download the 12-week pacing guide and follow that for the rest of the term. So that's helpful too. So there's several different ways that you can use that pacing guide, but it's so important. And the teacher's announcements every week in the class are all based on that pacing guide.
Excellent. Ryan, do you have anything else to add in terms of best practices you use that Deb hasn't already covered?
So Deb sounds like she has a little more locked in than I do. I do, like I said, I check day to day. I talk with the kids, as I said before, as much as possible. Like I said, some kids have learned to avoid me when they see me walking down the hall. Another thing that we do, we let, some of the kids, they have the choice of where they sort of utilize their online time. And we know that there's some that, they choose to go home and maybe not necessarily are using that time as wisely as they probably should. So we have things in place that I'll look at the pacing guide. I'll see the kids that are falling behind. And so I sort of take like an average place of where all the online kids are as far as their progress at any given time. And I use the pacing guide. So I use a couple points of data. And when they have dropped beyond a certain point, we have it in our, for the kids that have signed the papers to where they can be off campus, we have it that if they drop, below a certain point, then that privilege will be revoked and then they have to come back into school and until they catch back up, or it sounds something like what Debbie was saying with homework lab. So they do that, and there's some stuff that with the seniors, because they're like, well, this doesn't affect my grade point. And then they end up, we have some things in place to where it's kind of gives them a nice nudge into doing the right thing. Also sending, in the beginning of the year, as the year goes on and as the years go on, I sort of, catalog. It's kind of like the prevailing issues that come up or the prevailing questions that kids have or concerns or technical difficulty, whatever it might be. And I try to kind of head it off to the past when I talk to them at the beginning of the year and partway through the year. And I think the one thing that I should probably just record it and just put it on repeat is, have you talked to your instructor about this yet? Because it's usually about an assignment. But that's always the first place to go. And, but that's just sort of some of the stuff we've talked about, the other things too. So
that is an amazing strategy, Ryan, and often works. So I know our instructors appreciate you directing them in that way. All right, well, let's switch to the next question. What do you think about the differences in terms of student performance in a lab setting versus working independently?
Well, research shows that working with a mentor, the kids are at least 2 times more likely to succeed than without a mentor. So the kids that work independently or off campus, a lot of times don't have that contact with a mentor. Just like Ryan said, I had kids too. I'd walk down the hall and they'd look at me and their eyes would get really big, like, oh shoot, like I need to get some work done, or there's Mrs. Lynch, I haven't talked to her yet. So I have the same issues, Ryan, that you're having. One thing I used remind.com, and that was, I know a lot of teachers use that, but that's what I used for those kids that worked off campus. And that was a great way for me to communicate, because I could send them messages and it would go right to their phone as a text and they would get right back with me. But my students, 90% of my students came to the computer lab. I rarely had a kid not pass a class. And the kids that work independently, it was a lot higher percentage of kids that didn't do well because they didn't have that. I did as best I could to remind them and to reach out to them physically, find them in school or use the Remind app, but it's just harder to reach those kids that are working off campus. And so my kids just didn't perform quite as well.
Yeah, so I also use the Remind app. I love it. I use it for actually all my classes. I send out reminders. I don't just, I do have it for the off-campus kids as well as the on-campus kids. It's kind of all the same thing. The other thing that I do, to answer the question directly, I think I have, to mirror what Debbie said, I have much better success rates with the kids that are using my computers in the lab rather than working independently. I know my contacts with the independent off-campus kids is far greater than the ones on campus. But the other thing that I do is I send out a survey every Friday to the kids, and I'm actually really on them about this, about answering these surveys. And it typically asks them if they're on pace, if they have any questions, if they need help, that sort of thing. And it usually takes like 30 seconds. I do it in Google Forms. And then, invariably they'll go in and like, I'll just get through it real quick and get it done and say I'm fine and I'm on pace. I don't need anything answered. And then I look at the SLP, and indeed that's not true. But what ends up being is it's a good sort of, it works for count day too, as part of like a thing to put in their file, sort of as a data point of proof that we are indeed interacting with the kids.
Yes, that's great. And do you send that Google form right through Remind, Ryan?
No, I send it through email, and I actually never thought about sending it through Remind. But some of our kids don't have cell phones, which is
okay.
Because kind of a barrier too.
With Remind, the kids can use email that don't have a text or a cell phone or texting on their cell phone, but that's how I send my Google Forms. I used to send it right through the Remind app. So they'd open the Google form right on their phone, and it seemed like that they would fill it out quicker because a lot of kids don't use email anymore. So that was something I did that I think was really helpful. But
yeah, we have school email. We just, in the past couple of years, we have just now given our kids actual school email addresses. And I think most of the kids, by and large, they love it, but there's some kids that still use their old email addresses and don't check their school email addresses. So that's a good tip. I like that.
Right. And we have a webinar coming up on September 26th about Count Day. So we are going to talk a lot more about some best practices, which is similar to what we were just talking about with sending out a Google form once a week during the 4-week count period. So those are some things that we're going to talk about in September too.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Jolynn. How did you choose your online mentor, and how do you manage mentor turnover? We know that, mentor roles often are not, in it for a lifetime, although we are starting to get mentors who've been doing the job for quite some time. But just curious about how you chose them and how you manage any turnover that might happen in terms of transitioning one mentor to the next.
It is really hard, especially when you've had somebody who has done a good job for an extended period of time and they retire or leave your district, and then, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, and how do you replace that person? The consistency is a big key, and we actually have had in the last 5 years 3 different mentors. Ryan has now been the mentor for 3 years, going on 4 years. So that's it's just nice to have that consistency, because you do learn things as you go along. As he's mentioned, some of the things you just see over and over and over, and know that those are things that you have to address, or we have to address as a school to kind of deal with. So I would say that when I'm thinking about an online mentor, like I said, I want somebody who's got great communication skills. I'm looking for somebody who is tech savvy, because there is a lot of technical side of it. And students, if they get stumped, even though they can go to the instructor, they typically don't. I think a lot of times they go right to the person who's on site. So it's good to have that mentor be somebody that can work with the students. I think it's probably also safe to say that this person has to be pretty flexible, because one of the benefits of online learning is you can do it anytime, any place, anywhere. well, okay, now they're not sitting in front of me every day. I have to be flexible as the mentor as well, and be able to work with students and their crazy time frames sometimes. We do get into some last minute situations too, so it kind of puts us in a crunch, and Ryan manages all of those time issues really well as well. And I would say you want somebody who's very strong in instructional strategies, because you're not necessarily the instructor, but you've got to be able to help reach all kinds of learners and motivate them. When they sometimes, even the best kids don't want to motivate themselves all the time to do their online work. So the getting behind, it happens a lot, and being able to figure out how to reach that student, it's really important.
So really having a designated, consistent person is important, and research will back that as well. We have seen models that are not successful where a principal may assign a different teacher every hour to a lab on their planning hour, for instance. And that certainly would not bode well with what you deem to be success strategies around consistency and communication with the same person. So appreciate you sharing that. Anything else from Jolynn or anybody else on the panel? All right, let's move on to our next question. As an administrator, how do you support your online mentor? I know we talked a little bit about that, but how do you decide staffing and location and space? And as the program grows, how do you make those decisions about mentoring and specific expectations you might have for count day?
Well, it has changed. I'll be honest. Online learning as a concept has changed drastically in the last 10 years. And so the best thing I can do to support is just to be available and to listen as we learn things, because like I said, it morphs. I mean, it just, from one year to the next, you see different challenges. You see more ease of use. I would say that as we've gone on, our students need our help less with getting technology-based kind of things worked out, but they sometimes need our help more on the instructional side, or on the motivation side, or those kinds of things. So the best thing I can do as an administrator is just be available. And then really, I guess, in the whole listening and communicating thing between me and the mentor is, what do we need to do, and have that individual help guide any policy change or anything that we have to put in place, any parameters to try to combat some of those issues and challenges that we run into.
Excellent. Well, what about the structures and policies that you have in place? And some of the things I'm thinking about are student permission to be on and off campus while taking online courses. We talked briefly about that. Meeting with seniors, sending letters home to parents, sending low progress emails, and how do you handle second semester students that want to participate in graduation? Those kinds of, I guess, policy and structure situations that you have as part of the program.
Most, if not all of these things are the exact result of what I was just talking about, where over years, the mentor has said, hey, this is an issue and we should look at a way to address it. And so we've worked together to do that. I guess our structures that start would be with the application process. We do have our students apply to take an online course. And then as part of that application, they need to show a connectedness of the course they're looking to take with their EDP, their educational development plan, which is like their career planning, with their path, and whatever that connection could be. But they have to do a little bit of work to select the course, get the syllabus, look at it, and then explain how it fits in their plan. And then we do on the administrative side, review students' preparedness to be successful in an online class. We kind of look at their GPA, their past experiences, maybe teacher input, and then test scores, just to see, is this a student who has a good potential to be successful? And if not, what supports are we gonna have to put in place to help them actually be successful? So I guess that's the kind of like the first step is the application process. Some of the things we've learned in the meantime is we send a letter home to every online learner and their parents at the beginning of the year, like a snail mail, actual hard copy letter that goes home and says, your student has enrolled in an online course, and this is what it means. This is what it means for grading. This is what it means for who's the mentor in our building, but this is who it means for the instructor who is not a person on site, and what it means for you as a parent, and any timelines that are different. One of the things you mentioned was seniors. Second semester, our seniors are done about 2.5 to 3 weeks ahead of the rest of the school. So it's kind of important that their deadline for when all of everything has to be turned in is ahead of the rest of the building. I can't have them completing things after they've graduated. So I need that stuff done early. And so we kind of put those timelines in place. For seniors' second semester, we noticed a couple years ago, we were having massive, what do I want to call it? Apathy. Maybe that's a nice way to put it. And so like Ryan said earlier, they would get into this course and realize, well, I don't need it. My college has already accepted me, so I'm just not going to do anything. And we had a few very, very low percentage completions. And we said we have to do something about that. So in talking with some area schools, we learned of some of their practices and ended up, I meet with the seniors at the end of the first semester to say, if you are enrolled in a second semester online course, here's what you need to know. This is the deadline. This is your time frame. It won't be extended in any way, shape, or form. And you have to have your course completed by then. If it is not successfully completed, that is with a passing grade, then the seniors are not permitted to walk in our graduation ceremony. And it got close this year. We did have a few who were really pushing that line. About 6 weeks out, throughout Ryan is communicating with the students and the parents, but 6 weeks out, I sent a message to everybody just saying, hey, don't forget about this deadline. About 4 weeks out, I sent specific messages home to the parent and the student if they were in what I consider dire straits at that point. If Ryan had said, hey, this is not looking good, then I sent a personal message home. And got a number of phone calls back from those, which was good because it means they are paying attention to it. But it was like, are you going to be serious about this graduation thing? And the answer is yes, we are serious. So I think that actually worked as a great motivator because every single one of them pulled it out. So I have to say that it worked really well. Again, it was the first year we did that. So we'll see how it goes in the future here.
And by last second, it was literally for a couple kids last set, like 11:59 type, that last second. And that's actually one of my sort of favorite things about Frankenmuth is like when there's a policy set, adherence is actually there. If a kid is at 59.9 or 59.8, there has to be the line at some point, and we stick to it. And I think that's conveyed in not just our online classes, but in our school culture in general. It's not just a suggestion; it's actually there for a reason. So,
I applaud you for having such a comprehensive and communicative culture, but and supportive, Jolynn, because we don't often. There's times where we don't see that happening, where the principal or administrator is kind of absent from the work of what's going on with the mentor, and there isn't that support network and ongoing communication of need and adjusting policies and structures. So I applaud you and appreciate everything you're doing in that regard. We've got just a couple more questions. The second to last question, what does your school or district do to communicate to parents and guardians? You've talked a little bit about that. Is there anything else in terms of student progress or anything that we haven't already talked about that is important? I think you guys have shared a lot of great practices already, but is there anything else that you want to share?
Well, one thing I didn't mention about the mid-year conversation before the start of the second semester is that I do send that home in written form, and the student has to bring it back with their signature and the parent signature that they understand those deadlines for seniors specifically. Like I said, the parent gets a letter regardless of what grade level or, if they're taking an online class, they get a letter explaining the plan and how it works and how online courses work and so on. But I think it's important to have that signature, that acknowledgement that, yes, I have been told that this is the situation and this is how this works. So that second semester piece, we do that at that point.
And just on a technical side, we have sometimes 60. My first year, I think we had 70 kids doing online at once. But if you learn how to do like mail merging and those sorts of things, it's easier to get sort of communications that are more personalized to the kids and the parents. Because I think there's a lot of noise out there as far as like emails from the instructors, emails from me, emails from the school. And the parents get to the point where they're like, okay, this is just another whatever, progress checkup or progress report. But if you can somehow find a way to find a way to sort of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but use your time effectively and send out actual like personalized emails through like mail merges and those sorts of things. I think it really helps with how we communicate with our parents and the students.
And I totally agree. And that's one thing that when I talked about having a syllabus at the beginning of the year, that's another thing that I did too, was I sent a parent letter home because, as I stated earlier, parents just don't understand how the whole online learning works for kids in school. So that's really important. And through all this that Ryan's talking about, he monitors those kids through our student learning portal, which is fabulous to be able to monitor kids. You can see when kids logged in, you can see what time they logged in, what activities they worked on, what assignments that were submitted that day. And it's just great tool for mentors to be able to monitor their students. And I know Ryan and Jolynn are doing a great job because Frankenmuth had a 92% pass rate last year with over 80 students. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to loop back to something that Jolynn said. Our instructors, I know, greatly appreciate hearing from mentors when there are those dates that school districts need grades by. I know second semester is always a challenge, especially with seniors, but because we have the varying start dates now to accommodate school districts that are starting before Labor Day, sometimes we do get those challenges where all the school districts are asking instructors to have their grades back by a certain date. So I know for us, having mentors communicate that early in the second semester that, hey, just letting you know any of our students that are seniors are going to be needing their grades by X date, just helps our teachers plan and try to adjust their time so that they can make sure to meet those deadlines. Because sometimes they get those 11:59 submissions, and then the next morning the students are expecting all their work that they did, 20 assignments they turned in to be graded. And, I think they think it's auto-graded many times, and it is not most of the time. So, but there are real teachers on the other end. So we do appreciate that communication. I think that's an important aspect.
Well, and that really works both ways because the instructors that we've worked with, I know Ryan has had a lot of communication back and forth, but they really are quick about getting back to us, especially if it's, hey, this is a time contingent situation. We're at the end. And I feel so bad for the instructors at the end because they're just getting dumped on with all the work right at the last minute. But they really do a great job, and they'll make sure, hey, this was the deadline, correct? These two things came in. Do you want me to take those or not? And they've worked really closely, I know, with Ryan. You have some great instructors, so that is appreciated as well.
Awesome. We appreciate the compliment. Well, our final question is about supporting online students over the summer. Do you have a summer school program? And if so, what does that look like? And is it different than supporting them during the school year?
Well, this is kind of brand new for us. This is the first summer that we have actually enrolled the students for summer school. We're fortunate that in our area, we have a number of in-person summer school options. And that's really about what we relied on in the past, or students have enrolled themselves in Michigan Virtual as a homeschooled student and then just produced the results at the end of the course that they've completed it and what their score was. This was a whole new experience and actually was undertaken by our guidance office secretary who, previously, before we had an online coordinator, did the enrollments and things like that. So she had some familiarity with that process. But what she has remarked on more than anything is, again, this communication piece and how throughout the summer, every couple of weeks, she would just send out a message. And if kids were getting, behind or hadn't started or whatever the case might be, she would kind of throw that out and let the student and the parent know, hey, don't forget. And I think it really motivated a number because, again, she got some phone calls, she got some questions, but she got so much support from the parent. Thank you for letting me know that they're not doing that, because they told me they worked on it for 4 hours last night or something like that. And so it was really, it was very valuable to have that connection, which we have not had in the past because we weren't enrolling the students, so we weren't really monitoring and able to see what their progress looked like. It was also really good as you got closer and closer to that deadline to be able to say, oh, they got this done. And it was a great process. We had a very, very good first summer offering this.
Excellent. Well, we really want to thank both of you for being here. And Deb, I greatly appreciate your expertise. We want to leave you with this website, mblri.org/guides. We have several guides. We're very fortunate that our Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute has produced. They are free and accessible. The student guide is aimed at middle and high school students who are thinking about taking a virtual course. And this guide really shares advice and recommendations from virtual mentors and instructors. We have the parent guide. So if you're maybe thinking about starting up a program, there's a parent guide, and it's kind of written for parents and students really that are kind of thinking about taking a virtual course, but it's really relevant for school counselors and other school personnel. And it really is helpful in informing people about the decision-making process of whether or not to take one online. We also have the teacher guide to online learning, and this is really intended for those that are new to teaching online. And then the mentor one, again, as we've learned today, and we know that best practices that all Michigan public school students taking a virtual course are expected to have a mentor assigned to them. And the mentor is an employee of the school district, and the student attends and acts as a critical, they attend and act as a critical on-site support to the student. So the mentor guide is really helping better understand that role. A lot of the things we talked about today and many more. And finally, the newest one that we have is our school board guide to online learning. And this is just, the guide was prepared and reviewed and supported from the Michigan Association of School Boards. And it's really around to help acquaint school board members with K-12 online learning. So again, this webinar will be recorded and accessible, but wanted to give you that there. And I'm gonna this time open it up to any questions. Again, if you'd like to put them in the chat window, great. If you'd actually like to ask your question, just click the raise hand button and we will unmute your mic and allow you to speak. Any other questions that you have on the webinar today or for any of our panelists?
Well, while people are thinking of those questions, I wanted to add a little something about summer school. How we did it at my school was I was not present, but I signed all the kids up for summer school. We had 30 to 35 kids every summer that took courses, and I was still considered their mentor, but I was, technically on summer vacation. So my school just added $10 or $20 to the cost of the course, and that's how my school district paid me. And the parents had the option of just going with Michigan Virtual and paying one price, or they could pay a little extra for me, and they all paid extra for me because every week, every Friday, I did similar to what Jolyn said her secretary did, as I would send out a progress report to the parents every week. And then I was there just for the kids and the parents for questions, but I was that person every week to say, this is how your kid's doing. And like Jolyn said, the parents were like, well, thank you. That's not what I've been being told, but that was really, we had a very successful summer program by doing that. So that's just a way to be able to do it and not have to take money out of your own budget to have your mentor did that. And I did it from Northern Michigan. So it didn't matter where the mentor was.
So Deb, I'm going to hand this question to you. I know the answer, but I'm going to give it to you because I think you're the best to answer it about, do you have to be a certified teacher to be a mentor in a school district?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot. And as of 3 years ago, you did have to be a certified teacher to be in with online students, but the law has changed. And now the teacher, and so when I was a high school teacher, I was a certified teacher, so I could be in that lab. But now the law has changed, and the teacher of record is now considered the Michigan virtual instructor. So it doesn't matter who is in the classroom. It just needs to be a professional employee of the school district. So it could be a parapro, it could be a counselor, a secretary, a teacher. It doesn't matter. Just obviously, as we've talked today, it needs to be someone that has the time to dedicate to the kids, because it's tough when you throw it on the lap of an administrator or a counselor or even a teacher that doesn't have an hour off. That's really tough to do a good job. But you do not have to. That's why count day has become a little tricky, because the teacher of record is now the Michigan virtual teacher, and they can't take attendance like we previously were able to do. So no, you do not. The law has changed. You do not have to be.
Debbie, you're going to highlight some of that during the upcoming webinar in September about pupil accounting, correct?
Correct.
All right, great. Other questions? All right, well, seeing none, we'd like to thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Just know that this webinar will be available at michiganvirtual.org/webinars. So you'll be able to access this, and just a reminder that mvlri.org/guides gives you access to all the guides. On behalf of myself and all the Michigan Virtual colleagues here to support you, we welcome you to connect with us on any of the things you heard about today, and feel free to reach out and let us come see how we can help you in your individual districts. I want to thank Jolyn and Ryan and Debbie for their time, and all of our Michigan Virtual staff on the back end who helped us with this webinar today. Wishing you a great school year, and thanks so much for joining us. Have a great week.